All right, let's talk Florida State Seminoles football. This is an FSU program that, of course, started off the regular season with a statement victory over Alabama that looks even better after the Crimson Tide seemed to be playing better and better football. Obviously handled business week 2, coming off a bye in a pretty, I don't want to say easy matchup this weekend, but a favorable matchup for the Seminoles. But on top of that, though, we've got some interesting news and what I think is a really good strategy by Norvell and his coaching staff. It's indicative of a program taking that next step as they prepare for the rest of the season and prepare for conference play. We'll get to that news in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the FSU Seminoles came into the season obviously trying to build off of, or I should say, put in the rearview mirror, the disastrous 2024 campaign, and so far they've done that up to this point. But the reality is it's sort of a week-to-week league. It's a week-to-week season in all college football, right? You can win a couple good games. You can collapse in a hurry. We see that happen every single year. One team gets off to a hot start. They lose a few games down the stretch. I feel like Ole Miss is like that every year, for example. They start like 5-0. They're a top 10 team, and then you wake up and they're 8-5 come January. We're like, what the heck happened? Want to really avoid that kind of outcome if you're FSU, obviously. And to that end, Norvell is making really good decisions in terms of using the first couple games and the bye week to fine-tune the roster and make adjustments where needed to improve this football team. And he has done that with some key lineup changes. Let's get into the report right here, courtesy of SI.com. The report says, to kick off the week, Florida State released its weekly depth chart. After the week off, there were a few changes to note. On Monday, the Seminoles unveiled their 2 deep for the matchup against Kent State. Florida State made a couple changes, primarily on offense. It appears junior tight end Randy Pittman Jr. is unlikely to play this weekend. He's no longer the depth chart with redshirt senior Marqueston Douglas and sophomores Landon Thomas and Amari Williams listed as co-starters. Williams was the first tight end on the field against East Texas A&M. Here's the interesting part. Along the offensive line, Florida State has settled on its starting 5. After beginning the season as a co-starter at both guard spots, redshirt senior Jacob Rizzi is now a backup to left guard Richie Leonard IV. I tell you what, the fourth Richie Leonard, that's a law firm if there ever was one. And right guard Adrian Medley. Redshirt sophomore Andre Otto is a co-backup with Rizzi behind Leonard IV. So here's what's very interesting. Here's what's really important. I'm not going to talk about why the individual moves and the individual offensive linemen, who's better, who's worse, who's playing better, who's playing worse. Obviously, the coaching staff made that evaluations for themselves over the bye week after looking at the film over the past couple games, and of course, everything that happened in training camp and the offseason, spring ball, all those factors, of course. What I'm going to focus on is the fact they're making changes to fine-tune the roster. One of the things we talk about all the time on this channel is that major college football, big boy college football, is basically becoming like the National Football League. Now, usually when we say that, we refer to, the NIL concept, transfer portal, right? It's becoming like free agency that we see in terms of the NFL game, the trades and everything like that. Players are on a team they may play for 4 teams in 4 years in the NFL now. Similar kind of aspect happening at the collegiate ranks. But there's another important factor as well. Because the season now has that playoff with a bunch of teams getting in, it's a longer season. It's a different strategy, much like the National Football League. In the NFL, what the good teams do, the smart teams, is they use the month of September, the first 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 games, to figure out who are their guys, who are their starters, who can they rely on, and who they can't, right? The mediocre teams, they go into their season with their starters, I'm talking NFL guys now, and they sit there and say, okay, we're just going to go with these guys, and we're not going to make any changes, we're not going to make any evaluations, right? That's what bad teams do. Smart teams, what they go in is they start their season with their strategy, with their starters, with their players, and then they react to what the opposition does to them, and they say, okay, we have to change out this guy can't be a starter, this guy should get more playing time, and that's what the smart teams do. That's why in the NFL you'll see teams like the New England Patriots during that Bill Belichick dynasty, like the Philadelphia Eagles last year, like the Kansas City Chiefs numerous times start the season so, right? The Patriots often start like 2-2 before they went on a run. The Eagles started 2-2 last year before they won the Super Bowl. The Chiefs have gone off to slow starts numerous times over the past 6-7 years or so before finishing the season with a strong postseason push. That's because in the first few weeks of the season, the month of September in the NFL, these smart teams are doing the evaluation of their players and reacting to the opposition. Mike Norvell and his staff at Florida State are doing the exact same thing. I can't tell you how many programs at this time of year, right? They'll play a lot of programs. They play one tough game, sort of like FSU did, Alabama. They play a couple of sort of mid-tier guys, and then they wait to make adjustments until they're deep into conference play. Here's the problem. If you wait till you're deep into conference play and you've lost a game or two or something like that, it may be too late. Your season may be done. Now is the time to evaluate and say, okay, we tried this guy. Didn't work. We tried that guy. Looks pretty good. Let's give him more opportunities. Let's give him more playing times. That's what you should do as a coach. That's what the smart programs do. I commend Mike Norvell and his FSU staff for doing that, specifically on the offensive line. Obviously, you're talking about a new scheme, new quarterback, a lot of new pieces. You need this offensive line as we get ready for conference play to be 100% completely aligned, right? You don't want to go into a big matchup. You don't want to go play Miami and you've got to throw in a new starter because you're changing out guys late in the conference play. Use the beginning of the season to figure out who your starting five is going to be. Injuries are going to happen. That's just reality. I mean, you can't really plan for that as much as you want to, but the reality is right now is the opportunity to use the first 2 games of the season, the month of August, the first half of September, in college football's case, to evaluate your guys and make changes where needed, and that's exactly what the Florida State Seminoles have done here. And while we're talking about offensive line play here, let's pull up this graphic right here from Pro Football Focus, talking about the best pass blocking grades in all of the ACC. And right now, Florida State sits with the second best grade. You can see it all the way over there, the second column from the right, with an 88.0 pass blocking grade, only Southern Methodist University, which it's still bizarre to me. I know it's modern college football to see SMU in the ACC, right? It's just a weird thing. It's like seeing Berkeley there. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, it's just Stanford too, right? It seems weird. Anyway, so you can look at this and say, all right, the Florida State offensive line has been playing good football, but you still don't rest on your laurels. That's the important thing. You may be playing good, but you could always be playing better. You always need to look for areas to improve. That's what Norvell and his staff are doing, and I think it's a great sign for them going forward. All right, we got more news to break down when it comes to Florida State, but first, Seminoles fans, in the comment section below, we're talking offensive line, we're talking offensive linemen. I played college football offensive lineman. By the way, my school, little trivia question for you, actually played Jameis Winston FSU program, right? We're talking a long time ago. I played FCS football, so we'll give a little clue there. Maybe you guys can figure out what game I'm talking about. But in the comment section below, what Florida State offensive lineman historically do you think is the greatest of all time? The best FSU offensive lineman of all time? Put them in the comment section below. All right, let's get into more news here. Yeah, I bet you guys didn't know I actually played against FSU, or my team did. I was hurt for the game and I was a backup. I was not very good. You did not see me on the field. But just a funny little coincidence there, how world we live in here. But let's talk about another young playmaker. I want to switch gears here slightly and talk about Micahi Danzy or Micah Danzy. I think it's Micahi, but when I look this up, I've had people tell me multiple different pronunciations. So in the comment section below, if anyone's got like a known good, hey, this is how you pronounce it, please correct me, because I tried to look this up about 500 different times, and 500 different people have 500 different ways to pronounce it. So I apologize to the Danzys in advance. I'm totally butchering this, I'm sure. But this report here talks about Micahi Danzy was barely on the field to get a practical understanding of Gus Malzahn's offense or his new position this spring for Florida State. He wasn't hurt, mind you. He was busy running an ACC champion sprinter as a freshman, running a 44.38 400-meter dash that was the fastest 400 in ACC outdoor track and field championship history. That's fast. That was the expectation for Danzy when the Florida High product decided to stay home and enroll at FSU. He was going to play football and run track. Another trivia question. I actually played against Florida High School when I played high school football way back in the day. So this is really kind of a little blast for the past, just for me personally. I know you guys don't care. The report goes on to say, but it was fair to wonder because of that how his football career would be able to keep up. With Olympic aspirations on the track, would he be able to make an impact on the football field if pretty much all he was able to do during football spring camp was position meetings and film study? It's a fair question. It hasn't taken long this season for Danzy to answer that question with a resounding yes. The converted running back has brought that track speed to the gridiron this season, scoring an end-around touchdown each of the Seminoles' first 2 games of the season. The report goes on to say, quoting Mike Norvell here, "We have a lot of belief in him. I think there are 2 kind of parts of the move to receiver. We never would have moved him if we didn't believe in what it could be. He's somebody that has great ball skills. He's got great speed. I think you see that he's strong with the ball in his hands and he can change direction and be able to be a dynamic threat. I do think he has a great future in front of him. We're going to continue to push him to grow in that confidence. You take out spring practice for him. He had some, but it was limited. He's making huge strides throughout this early part of the season." And this kind of circles back to my original point, right? You use the first couple games to figure out what you have, right? Hey, listen, is Danzy ready to be a playmaker this year? If he's not, no problem. But don't have a guy that you sit there and say, listen, we need you in Miami. We need you, in big-time ACC games down the stretch here. If he's not ready, you don't want to have to rely on him in those situations. So what do? Give him opportunities. Give him chances to be successful early in the season. Alabama, East Texas A&M, give him those chances. And what does he do? He makes plays. And now you're like, okay, we can trust this guy to be a part of our offense offense. He's obviously not going to be remotely close to the whole thing, of course, but he's a guy that can be part of the offense in spurts, so now you can use him. Again, use August, use September to find out what you have and figure out what players you can rely on the rest of the year. The smart NFL coaches, the smart NFL franchises do that. The smart college coaches and the smart college programs do that. Mike Norvell and FSU. I know a lot of people looked at that 2024 debacle and they said this could be a dumpster fire. They've been making smart moves ever since he arrived in Tallahassee, and I think this is an example right here of Norvell making yet another one. All right, and just to finish off here, let's go ahead and look at Florida State's schedule the rest of the way, because I think this is really important, right? Because obviously they have Kent State at home. I think most people expect a pretty significant victory there, not to get ahead of ourselves, of course. You go to Virginia, a little bit of feisty there. Then you have home against Miami, right? That's one of the games of the year right now. The Hurricanes, Carson Beck, they're good. Coach Cristobal, that's going to be a good game. And then you work through the schedule. And the thing that's so interesting here is, Von Tech is terrible. Clemson feels like they were vastly overrated. I mean, Stanford isn't anything. I mean, they don't play Berkeley. They don't have to go out to West Coast to play Berkeley. They do have to go out west to play Stanford. But I think that's going out to Palo Alto and playing those guys is a lot easier than I think having to play, California this year, the way it just works out. I mean, I think their schedule is pretty solid across the board, right? I mean, they don't have any, that game of the year against Miami and that final game against Florida, I think is very interesting just because it's a rivalry game. Florida has talent. They've just vastly underperformed per their talent. I always hate playing rivals towards the end of the season when they have talent, right? You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things where they've got enough guys where they can just beat you if they can figure it out, and the game that players seem to always figure it out is the rivalry game. So that's something to keep an eye on for Florida State, looking at their schedule right here. But otherwise, it's really good. That opening matchup against Alabama was a powerful statement, especially since Alabama since then, they handled Louisiana Monroe, which everybody expected, and then they dominated a mediocre Wisconsin team, right? But it was still an out-of-conference Big Ten opponent, and Alabama looked like what we'd expect from Alabama to traditionally look like, right? Beat up on an inferior out-of-conference opponent, and they've done it back-to-back weeks. That does nothing but strengthen Florida State's case as a really good football team. Obviously, handle business, do your job, come up with a big win against Kent State, go up to Virginia, get a win in the column in ACC play, and then you got Miami, right? That's going to be such an interesting game. I think we're going to figure out a lot about FSU over the next few weeks, of course, but if they can handle business against Kent State, which they should, if they can avoid a debacle up at Virginia, and then they gear up for Miami at home, that is a monster game. That is a massive performance. I think October 4th, that is going to be one of the biggest games we've seen in a long time between those two programs. I mean, Miami's legit. They're top 5. I think Florida State is trending in the right direction. This ACC is feeling like old school, just what we used to see from Florida State and Miami. These two guys at the top, and I love to see it just as a football fan in general. But right now, just looking at Florida State's schedule, they're in a really strong position to make a serious run. This is why you used August and September to evaluate what you have. That way, when you have to play Miami and then you have to play Pittsburgh the following week, you don't have to rely on new guys to show up and okay, we got to change our strategy. We got to throw in new starters. You don't want to do that in the middle of conference play. Doing that early in the season, Norvell has done that. It's a great approach. It's a great strategy. It gives the Florida State Seminoles a much higher likelihood of success.